I find it almost exhausting how frequently she's mentioned.
Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. This is Charles from the channel Book on Stereo, and I'm here to bring you guys another episode of In Conversation. And we're going to be talking about a topic that may be potentially triggering to a lot of viewers out there. I'm joined by my special guest, Annie, from her Instagram handle is a funny girl named Annie. You guys should definitely go follow her if you haven't followed her yet on Instagram. You may convince her to get a YouTube channel. We'll try. We'll try. We'll see. We'll see how we can do there. But how are you doing today, Annie?
I'm good. I've Today has been a bit busy because of work and stuff, but yeah, I'm good. And re Instagram or re YouTube channel. I have had a YouTube channel before, and I hate editing so much. Like
Okay.
it is the worst thing. Like oh god, I've tried to like do it to enjoy it, but it's not a fun time for
Is
me.
that a fun thing? To
Yeah.
each their own. I find taking pictures like really tedious. I'm not good at taking photos, but editing a video, I'm like, I can handle that. I can handle
Yeah.
that. But to each their own. So like, at least you try. It's not your thing, but it's cool that we have you in the book community as a whole on Instagram. But like I said, today's topic may be potentially triggering. I will have to preface this by saying this is our opinions and our opinions alone. We're not aiming to anger or dismiss anyone that has different opinions than our own than what we're going to be expressing in this video. If anything in the video you think is potentially harmful, please let us know and please reach out to us because it's not our intention. We're just really having conversation on booktube consumerism and the culture of buying tons and tons
Mhm.
of books. So without
Yeah.
further ado, let's kind of get into the baseline of how do we consume our books? Do you buy physical books, ebooks, audiobooks? What is your preferred method?
So, I mostly get all of my books from the library for the most part. Like, this is actually kind of the first, and so to kind of go jump off your like point about like this is our opinion and whatnot. These are all like my experiences and like how my buying habits have changed and how I've noticed that they've changed because of Bookstagram. And this is something that I feel like isn't necessarily like talked about as much. And so that's
Mhm.
part of the reason why I really wanted to talk about this. So I consume books mostly through the library. I get a lot of them, like I get a lot of physical books. So like here is a physical library book. And then I consume a lot of audiobooks like only through the library. I've never like actually bought an audiobook before. Partly because like I'm not the biggest fan of Amazon in general, and a lot it seems like a lot of the like audiobooks are available through like Audible, and like there
Mhm.
are other like options, but they're not necessarily like as extensive. And I really hate the fact that like Amazon has like the Audible exclusives and that kind of thing.
Mhm.
So I read most of my books through the library, both physical e-reader and audiobook. What about yourself?
I'm I should be it should have come to no surprise to anyone that I'm like almost like 90% an audiobook listener. I do not If you give me a book without an audiobook, I will look at you like you're crazy. I'm like,
Mhm.
how dare you recommend me a book without an audio? Or give
Mhm.
me a book without an audio, then we need to talk about our friendship
Yeah.
then, if you're gonna do
Yeah.
that to me. But I would say I used to be one who got audiobooks from the library.
Mhm.
Um, but the more I began to read and some of the more indie titles that I was looking for, I was kind of just naturally driven towards Audible.
Mhm.
And I definitely use LibreFM a lot more and other services like Chirp or Authors Direct that kind of break away from the Amazon paradigm.
Mhm.
But I find myself because I like listening. I'm very particular in my listening speed. Um,
Same.
so like I usually tend to like go for like buying my audiobooks, which is quite
Mhm.
expensive. I do realize that. But yeah, I consider it like how other booktubers consider like building their physical book collection.
Mhm.
To me, that's like me and audiobooks. Like
Yeah.
my collection is my audiobook collection. I do like it, but I do realize how like sometimes it's not the most expensive. Like it's actually probably cheaper to buy physical books
Yeah,
than or
definitely.
ebooks than to definitely go for the audio because the audio will always cost significantly more. So that's a little bit more about my reading taste.
Mhm.
But then also, I think the library comment that you get most of your books from the library, I think that's interesting as well because not everyone has a really. I think some but
Yeah.
depending on the area that you're in, you can have a ton of options
Mhm.
at your library, or you could have very limited
Yeah.
options.
That is definitely true. And like so my buying habits developed because I grew up like not like poor, but not well off. And so like my parents could not afford the reading habit that I had, if that makes sense. Like
Hmm.
cuz I read voraciously my entire or vivacious. No,
Voraciously,
yes.
voraciously.
I can't say words. It's been a long
No,
day.
it's
It's been a long
fine.
week. My entire life. And so like they couldn't afford to like buy that many books. And so I used to go like to thrift store hunting like for books as well. And I grew up in like the Sacramento area, and the Sacramento area has like a really phenomenal library. And I also am really lucky because I live in California, and like if you don't know, I tell this to everyone that I know. If you live in California, you can get a California library card to any library in California. So, like, not just the places that you live, but like, for example, if I visit LA, I can get an LA library card. So I have like 7 library cards. And so, yeah. So, like, that's part of how I'm able to go and consume books. And the thing is like, if I want like either an audiobook or a ebook, like I usually don't have to wait that long, and I usually can find it at one of the 7 libraries. However, if I want like a physical book, then that can be a little bit more tricky, especially because now I live in San Francisco, and this can kind of like transition into like our topic about like how like library systems are different, and also like how your like what you have access to can differ. So like you think San Francisco, like, oh, they have everything, except I affectionately call it like a hipster like just a hipster city in general. And like my tastes are a little bit too mainstream for San Francisco. So like you go to any bookstore in San Francisco, and if you find a romance section, great. That is amazing. But most of the time the romance section is like this big. And if you do like, and most places don't even have a lot of the independent bookstores don't have a romance section. And so when I want to buy romance books, I usually have to like trek to the half price books in Berkeley, which is like if you don't have a car, which I don't have a car, it's like an hour and a half of like a BART ride. Like it's a whole
It's
thing.
a whole
Uh,
thing. Hmm.
yeah, and when I visit home, that's where I get a lot of the books that I actually buy. So like a lot of the oh god. So the ones right here,
Hmm.
I got from when I was at home because Sacramento has a lot larger romance section, and they have a larger demographic who like reads romance. And so like you
Hmm.
can go into a bookstore, and like the romance section will be like, shelves and shelves and shelves. And so like I'm almost spoiled in a way when I go
Hmm.
there. And I there's Sarah, I think Sarah Thoughts on Books. She also lives in the city, and I posted like a book haul that I had, and she's like, "Where did you go? Because I cannot find a place that's." And I'm like, "Oh no, I like you have to drive like 2 hours to get a bookstore that will have this type of haul."
I didn't know that about California, so that's really cool to know. I definitely think on the library point, it comes down to where you are. Like you said, you kind of alluded to this, like where you are, what the reading taste of that community is, because the library is only going to buy books that enough people recommend
Yeah.
or things that they think that their readership would want.
Mhm.
And typically with romance, you probably have better luck with like YA, adult, mystery
Definitely.
thriller, middle grade, because I would think more people are willing to admit that they read those genres
Yeah.
versus reading romance. Romance still says it has a very negative connotation to it, but
Definitely.
kind of translating this over into booktube, like one of the quintessential questions that everyone asks when they get started on booktube, do I have to like have these massive bookcases with like all these books? I'm buying books from Book Outlet, like buy
Mhm.
like the dozens or like hundreds, don't even know anything about the
Yeah.
book, but it's just a nice book to put on the shelves. Because
Yeah.
I definitely see like that question is no, you don't have to have a ton of books, and you definitely see some booktubers that kind of are like the antithesis of that.
Mhm.
but I would say a lot of booktubers have, like, the big and this is not a dig on any booktuber, but
Yeah.
everyone has, like, their huge book hauls or a huge shelf with, like, a ton of books on them. I think too, you can kinda translate that into Instagram too,
Yes,
that sometimes
definitely.
physical books do better in terms of pictures versus
Yep.
an ebook. So
Yeah.
I'm wondering, even though we say, "No, you don't have to have a ton of these books," but is it almost like you have to either have a really good library system, really good
Mhm.
indie or used bookstore scene where you can get a lot of these books for super cheap to, like,
Mhm.
be able to really kinda make a dent in this
Yeah.
community? Like, what do you think about, consumerism and how that interacts with the booktube community?
So I will say I'm coming from you in front of my collection, and I will say that a lot of these books I have collected over like years, and even still, it's still like a like this is the extent of my collection. Like this is it. Um, and so like, but I definitely feel that. And before like I've spent more on books this year than I probably have in the last 5 years. And
Mhm,
this is just like from joining book. So I joined Bookstagram in like no like late November, early December of
mhm,
last year. And so I'm still like, but my reading habits haven't really like I have listened to more audiobooks. That is something
mhm,
that Bookstagram has introduced me to. But in terms of like everything else, like it pretty much has stayed the same.
mhm,
And so it's just the fact that like I feel almost this like pressure to like have these books because the thing is like you when you're taking like photos, like it's nice to have them all like an entire series. It's nice
mhm.
to like, if you're reading an ebook, like sometimes I like to pair it with the actual like a physical book from the
Actual
pre
book.
from and
Mhm,
that kind of thing. And like that all comes to like being able to buy these books. And like I am lucky in that like Sacramento has like a really good used library or used bookstore that I
mhm.
go to. And so I don't have to spend a gajillion dollars to get these books. But it's like I know that there are people who like buy these eBay hauls and all of that. And also it like there is this kind of like pressure. Like, it's not like you can say like, "Oh, no, you don't have to. You don't have to," and you don't like,
Mhm.
it's not a requirement, but it's almost like an unstated requirement, and, like, there I definitely notice that I get much more engagement when when I
Like
post,
hauling
like,
books.
not just a haul of books, but, like,
Mhm,
posting, like, multiple books as opposed to just, like, one and, like, doing, like, a review, and,
mhm,
like, also in kind of conjunction with that, the thing that I get the most engagement for is Step Back Saturday, and I think
mm,
there's, like, 2 reasons for that. One is that a lot of people follow that hashtag. So
yeah,
it's not just like my followers who see it, but also like it tends to go to like the outward community. And also because you're posting on a Saturday and people tend to be a little bit more active on the weekend. But in order to do Step Back Saturday, you have to have a book that has a step back.
that back.
And
Mhm,
like especially the older books, you can only find them like used or whatnot. Like I think it's starting to be more common I think, don't quote me on this, but I think it's starting to be more common for like newer authors to like put all editions to have step backs. Because
mhm,
I've yet to find a Sarah McLean book that doesn't have a step back,
mhm,
and that kind of thing. But like especially like the old stuff, like and it almost becomes like a collector's item. Like when Bridgerton came out, like people were talking about how like a complete set of the Bridgerton books with the step back were going for like hundreds of dollars on
$100.
eBay, and it's
Mhm,
like it becomes like this value thing where it's not just about the book, the words inside the book, but it's also about it's about like having this particular edition of the book, being able to like post about that, and like and like when someone finds a like rare step back, it's like almost like
mhm,
a celebration within the community. And
mhm,
like you either have to have a lot of time, you have to have a lot of money, or a combination of both. And you also have to be lucky because like you don't it's not like you can like go to a bookstore and like get a first
yeah,
edition Lisa Kleypas from like the 90s. Like you have to be very lucky, or you have to be willing to pay top dollar on eBay or Etsy or wherever you get these secondhand books. And so like that I feel like is a very like that is a huge barrier to entry for a lot of people to come in and do this. And like if you go back to like, well, I'm getting most of my books from the library, you don't necessarily know what edition you're going to get. Like, you don't know if you're going to get a step back, you don't know. And like, it's, and the number of times that I'm just like, oh, I hope I get a step back so I can like post it on Step Back Saturday. That is part of the reason why I've started buying more books. And I genuinely do my best to like only buy books that like I enjoy or I've read
Mhm.
before. Partly because I like don't read the books that I own, which is another thing that I definitely want to talk about how like people keep buying these books and they don't read them. They just sit on their shelves. Um,
Mhm.
but yeah, it like it's a very it's a very like it's a weird social pressure to kind of be in this space almost,
Mhm.
if that makes sense.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I was thinking in terms of like content, like both for Instagram and YouTube. You mentioned too, like how reviews tend not to get like the most engagement when you post a review about a book. But if you do like
Mhm,
a book haul or Step Back Saturday, those get more views and more interactions. And I think too, the reason for that and why it kind of reinforces into this kind of like negative feedback loop almost is that it's low investment content. Like watching
mhm,
a book haul or watching a tag with a bunch of books or watching a recommendation video or
mhm,
something or a recommendation post, you can kind of translate them to either platform. They don't require really anything of the viewer. They're very like easy content to digest. And you don't have to go
mhm,
like you don't have to be worried like, oh, did I read this book? I can't watch or look at this post because like you're going to be reviewing this book, and I don't want to stay
mhm.
away from reviews. So I think in terms of like easy content, I think that's what you kind of it's not easy, I should say, but low investment. I don't want, I'm being
Mhm.
very careful not to like ding it because I definitely feel
Yeah.
like they have value and they can be really fun to watch. But I think it's because it doesn't require a huge amount of commitment. I think a lot of creators would say reviews tend to get less views
Mhm.
or comments because you're only going to get people that have read the book
Yeah.
versus like
Yeah.
a book haul or a book tag where you're just like you're talking very in general. And people are like, oh
Mhm.
yeah, I just like watched this person's book haul and bought five of the books on their book haul because they sounded interesting.
Mhm.
So I think
Yeah.
that's why sometimes you kind of get that perception, especially when you add in bigger booktubers who get sent a lot of books for free.
Yeah.
So a lot of times you may think that they're buying a lot of these books, but in
Mhm.
actuality they probably got like maybe like over 80% of them for free, and they're
Mhm.
just showing off as part of like just doing PR for the book. So it can
Yeah.
kind of seem like that. So if you're a new viewer coming into the space, you're like, oh my goodness, I guess I have to do book hauls because they're
Mhm.
popular and everyone's raging. I remember when Book Outlet was a huge thing in the community, and everyone was going like, $3 for like a brand new hardcover, and like
Mhm.
now it's eBay. Like I
Mhm.
think in some ways, like you said, it's kind of like an unsaid rule or
Yeah.
unsaid entry. Like even on Instagram, you notice there's more pictures of people like posting pictures of like actual books
Mhm.
than like a
Yeah.
JPEG of like of a cover of a picture on a
Yeah.
tablet, or
Yeah.
they add something
And
like a book to it.
yeah, I definitely have to work a little bit harder to like make my post engaging when I post an e-book as opposed to posting like a physical book. And I have to think a lot more about like how the colors are going to play and how to kind of put more into it, not just like have the book. And I also have to do like editing as well because I have a Kindle Paperwhite. I did talk about how I don't like Amazon. This was a present from my dad, which like I appreciate. If my dad is watching
Mhm.
this, like it is by far one of the most used things that I use. And it's nice because the library, like you can send it directly
To
from
your
your
Kindle.
phone, and it's
Mhm.
amazing. But it does like I cannot just take a picture of like the cover of the book on my Kindle and like call it a day. Like did that at the very beginning and I've just found that my pictures were kind of like boring and like one dimensional because you don't have the colors of the cover. And so what I have to do now is I like learned how to like edit photos and like use like it's called like Pixlr, I think is what it's called, which is like a software that I then like use to supersede the photo because like that way it's like a little bit brighter, a little bit more engaging.
Mhm.
And it and so then like on top of like having to plan my Instagram posts and like plan my pictures, I have to also take into account like not just like the time that it takes to write the caption and all of that. I also have to take into account the time that it takes to like edit the photo, which is like usually an extra like 15 minutes. And like I'm a busy person. And so it's it like I find that I prefer to get physical books, even though I do enjoy the like experience of reading on a Kindle.
Mhm.
Because I then don't have to like sit there and like think about it and like worry about it and all of that. And that like that is another part of it. And it's also nice to have like the physical books again when you're like doing a series posts, because like I was reading I recently read One Last Stop by Casey Milquest. Mil
Requesting something like that.
yeah, yeah. And I like would have loved to have Red, White, and Royal Blue, but I hadn't picked up a copy of it yet. I will, because it's one of my favorite books. I've recently read it. It's incredible. But I had to be very like conscious of like the things that I put
Mhm.
else in the picture to make it more engaging, so that it's not just a picture of an e-reader. And like there are some people who like that is what they do, and like like I do my best to like follow those people, because I want to support like less traditional and
Mhm.
less mainstream posts. But I also am aware that like if I don't make that photo engaging, then like people won't want to engage with it. And so that's kind of that interplay.
Mhm. Yeah, that's so true. Just like from my own personal journey, like the fact that I like ebook, like audiobooks, it's I had to figure out for a long time how could I make my channel my own
Hmm.
and not just go, oh, let me, because I can show you a physical book, but I didn't actually read the physical book.
Yeah.
I probably listened to the audio. And so for me, it was really trying to find a way to incorporate my own reading taste while
Hmm.
still trying to follow the trends of like what a lot of other people are doing in booktube. So I end up going through these phases where I'm like, you know what, I'm gonna buy a bunch of books or get a
Hmm.
bunch of books from. I sometimes I will just check out a bunch of the books from the library just for a video, just so I
Hmm.
can say, here's a physical book, or for Instagram posts. And
Yeah.
even when I go through the phase of buying books, like for me, buying books doesn't bring me joy as
Hmm.
much as I would like it to, and I totally get why some people will love the feeling of like having a physical book of like their favorite books or books that they really did enjoy, or just having a large book collection in general. So I get the feeling, but I get that for audiobooks. And
Hmm.
how do you make that content interesting and engaging, because you just have some people who just don't like audiobooks, or
Hmm.
audiobooks are not accessible because you have like you said, the whole Audible thing. Or if you try to go to the library, sometimes libraries don't have the best selection of like
Hmm.
current audiobooks. You may just have to go with classics because
Yeah.
they're public domain and you can maybe get those audiobooks for free. But yeah, it's a really hard topic to really discuss because like clearly having physical books in like your pictures or in your videos are like not an easy cheat way, but definitely a way to like get your name out there. Like I can see, remember
Hmm.
back in the days on YouTube where someone posts like a huge box and say, "I bought
Yeah.
100 books," and like the
Yeah.
channel would take off, and everyone
Yeah.
would be like, "Oh my goodness, what books did you buy?" And then, like you said, you get to a point where you find a lot of booktubers, me included, where we get in such the habit of buying and acquiring new books to stay relevant with the conversations, like stay on top of what everyone else is reading, that
Hmm.
I probably have over 100 books on my Kindle or audiobooks that I have never listened to. And I
Hmm.
don't know if I ever will, because like every time I
Yeah.
turn around,
They
there's like
just keep
someone
coming
going
out.
like, "Here's a new book," and everyone's talking about this brand new book. I don't want to feel FOMO, and I
Yeah.
think that too plays into the money issue.
Yeah.
Getting all
Definitely.
these new releases and getting all these same current like what everyone's reading in the booktube community, or if you want to do book clubs as
Hmm.
well in the community, sometimes not
Yeah.
all those books are accessible. So I definitely feel that there's ways to get around the community without having a ton of just like money to spend, but it definitely kind of makes it easier to
Yeah.
enter into the book community.
Yeah, and I will speak to being in book clubs because I'm in like 8. Uh and like it I have to plan so far into advance, and I have to I have to time everything as well. Like I can't request it too early because if I request it too early, by the time that we get to that book, the book will be due at the library. And I like Sacramento has a 6 week like lending period, where San Francisco only has a 3 week lending period. And so like I have to like kind of juggle back and forth. But of course, if I like get it from Sacramento, I have to like get my butt to my parents' house, and like
Mhm.
that, that's a timing issue as well. And so like it is very tricky. And this is all because like I want like physical books. Like it's because like all of where are they? I think they're directly behind me. Oh no. So these ones are all for Hot Highlander Summer, which I'm doing with it's like the seasonally booked up.
Mhm.
And so we're all reading Highlander romances. And only 3 of the like 6 or 7 were available at my library in physical form. And so the rest I had to get in ebook
Ebook.
form. And
Mhm.
and a few of them weren't even available in any of my library systems, so I actually had to buy them. And so like it was I don't know, it's just such an interesting like challenge and dynamic where and like I talk about this with like a bunch of my book clubs because they're like, "Oh, how do you get like so many books?" And I'm just like, "Well, I live in California." Like
Mhm.
that's one of the like positive things about living in California. We do pay high taxes, but we get stuff for those taxes. Uh, and so, but it can be so incredibly challenging and like almost disheartening a little bit. Like, especially I think it was uh, Natasha from Book Diva
Mhm.
on Instagram. She was talking about how there's nothing at her library. Like she was talking about how like there's just like you can't find anything, and like when you do find stuff, it's either like not true romance, or it's like a forever hold, like like you have to wait months and months. And like I am lucky that I have this resource, but I'm also aware that like not everyone else has that luck. And it's like it's so unfortunate if you live in a place that like doesn't cater to that, because you then almost can't participate. Or if you do want to participate, you have to be okay with like spending a bunch of money to get these books shipped to you. And
Mhm.
like I'm really happy that Half Price Books exists, because like their books are fairly cheap and like their shipping is fairly cheap. But I'm also aware of like that not every book is at Half Price Books, and it can just be such a challenge. And so I don't know. My hope is that with this video we like empower people to like have this conversation, and are able to like talk about it, and talk about like how they internalize the pressure, and how they consume books, and like how what works for them and what doesn't, and like what tricks they have for if they live in kind of a book desert, and that kind of thing. So yeah.
Yeah, and to kind of go off of that, I think that self-reflection is so important. Kind of reflecting on our own reading lives, how we go about getting our books, because I would say since I joined BookTube, I spend way, way too much money on books in general, just because I'm like, someone recommends this book or someone tells me to read this
I read
book,
this book.
and then it just kind of spirals from there. So I think two is really important to acknowledge the privilege that we have,
Hmm.
and like first like being literate as like a very rudimentary thing, being able to like actually read, being able to have the time to even read books.
Hmm.
As much as like I would say, like if you're in the booktube community, sometimes like I think the normal for a lot of people is maybe reading maybe like 1 or 2 books a year at best,
Hmm.
like at a normal level. Because like you have to think like if you're like busy with kids, or you have XYZ, or you have a ton of work, the last thing you have time for is to sit down and read like a 600 page or 500 page book. Like you may read 2 pages here, 2 pages
Hmm.
another month, and you're lucky if you finish like even a book a year.
Yeah.
So I think too, there's like a certain amount of privileges that we have in this community, where
Yeah.
like first, I can see like where some people may have some burnout of being in the
Hmm.
booktube community, because then once you get like arcs and like getting advanced copies of things, and then like signing up for art teams, it kind of takes on like a very weird, like Ashley from Bookish Realm had a really interesting video about talking about booktube in general, how it, and bookstagram too, how it's a weird space to be in because there's no true on or off button.
Yeah.
Because if you don't stay abreast and like read the popular books, you may not get as many views, or if you don't
Mhm.
read diversely enough or include different types of books in your videos, you may not be able to like make interesting content. And also
Mhm.
too for like recommendation videos, you have to like have read X amount of books to be able to make a good recommendation video, or you can be like controversial and not have read any of the books that you're recommending.
Oh god.
I hear that's a thing. No shade on anyone if you do that. I'm not fact checking anyone to see if they haven't actually read the books, but I think there's like it's really important. Like I think like what you said too, is just really like reflecting, kind of empowering people who may not have like the same privileges or same allowances that other people in the community have.
Mhm.
And really kind of like giving them kind of like courage and kind of brainstorming ideas of how to like be a member of the booktube community, but do it economically.
Mhm.
So I think that's a good like turning point. Like, what are some of the things that, from like our perspective, that we can like maybe suggest to someone who like, may not have a ton of money or maybe working on a very limited budget, may not have
Mhm.
the best library? How do we recommend that you don't feel like feeling FOMO because like you see like, oh, I have the latest Sarah J. Maas book, or oh, I have the latest Jennifer Armentrout book, or I
Mhm.
just like bought this rare copy of like Indigo by Beverly Jenkins or something like that.
Don't you hate
How?
Sarah J. Maas?
Okay, I was using
Like
it as an example. I was using it
you
as an
brought her
example.
up.
Okay, because like someone she gets mentioned so much, she always manages to make a way into like every one of my videos. So, like I just acknowledge it now. I blame Izzy and like a bunch of other booktubers. Like I can name them all.
I have
Who have
not
like,
read any of her books, so like I don't know. Like everyone keeps telling me that I should, and like maybe I'll get to it at some point, but like I don't know. It's one of those things where like I find it almost exhausting how frequently she's mentioned, which like, I don't know.
oh,
Like is
oh,
that oh,
oh,
did I say a spicy
oh,
take? I don't
you guys, we got a hot take coming in. We got a hot take.
I mean, like when her most recent book came out, it was all like that was all it was for an entire day was everyone talking about this book. And like I'm happy that people are excited, but like there's not I don't know, like there isn't anything that like I'm particularly like when I hear people talk about it, I'm like, I don't know that I really want to like if I want to read a romance series, it's usually like one that focuses on a different couple. Like I don't particularly enjoy reading like overarching romance series that like focus
Mm,
on the same couple because like you have to have it done well and a lot of time it feels like they just keep injecting conflict for like conflict's sake and like not necessarily because like because having a relationship can be challenging and difficult and so like a lot of time I'm just like I'm so done with the drama. Like if you have this much drama in your relationship, maybe you guys shouldn't be together.
oh,
I
okay.
don't know.
Don't come for Annie, you guys. It's her opinion. It's a safe place. But that was pretty spicy. I do have to say that was pretty spicy. But that brings me to like another thing that I wanted to comment about BookTube is that sometimes what can contribute to almost that idea that you have to buy books constantly to stay relevant and to stay active in the community is like stuff like that where like
Mm.
a new author like Cassandra Clare, Sarah J. Maas, Saba Tahir, Beverly Jenkins, or whatever you have, like big name, and like not even Beverly Jenkins, like big names in the like or like L.J. Shen or like Kennedy Ryan to name.
I've literally not read any of these books, like any of these authors. Like I read like classic historical romance, so I read a lot of like Lisa Kleypas, I read a lot of Julia Quinn, I read a lot of like Tessa Dare,
Mhm.
Sarah McLean, and so like you keep putting out names, and I'm just like,
Okay, we can include like Sarah McLean to who I've talked to a couple who I've talked to a couple times.
she's great.
It is I think when you see some of that when like everyone is like getting or hyping up the same book at the same time, especially for new releases, I think
Yeah.
that can contribute a lot to feeling like, oh, I don't have the means to get this book, and for libraries, especially if you read romance, you have it even less of a chance, especially if it's indie.
Yeah.
Like indie,
Yeah.
your best bet will be going to like the bad company, Amazon, getting
Mhm.
KU. So one of the things that I do have to give Amazon is credit for is that if you can only afford KU,
Yeah, you do get a
that
lot for.
is an amazing cost benefit because like you sometimes
Mhm.
get audiobooks alongside ebooks. You can get things outside of romance. Amazon publishes like frequently to Kindle
Mhm.
Unlimited from their own. So like
Mhm.
that would be one way I would like, even though it's Amazon, but
Mhm.
that would be one way that I can suggest to someone if like library is not a good option or used bookstores is not a good option. KU is actually I think it's like what $10
Something like that,
ish
yeah.
a month. And like if that's doable and you read pretty voraciously, like you can earn that back after reading maybe like 2 or 3 books.
And also one thing that you didn't bring up, but I know because of like my like insane love of libraries is that if you do live in a place that doesn't necessarily have the best library system, you can pay to like get a library card if you're not like I think like New York, it's like
Mhm.
$50 a year or something like that. And that's like that's even cheaper than like using KU. That does also come with like the like thing of the library where like, it's really dependent on their reader base and all of that. And like, I can talk about like the library systems in California and like which ones are like amazing and which ones are not.
Mhm.
But you have to kind of do a lot of research to like decide whether or not this library system is worth the money that you are investing in that kind of thing. Um, but that is another option. And I don't know. I mean, excuse me. Like unfortunately, there isn't like a good solution. The most complex problems don't have simple solutions. And like this is a complex problem, and it's not just a complex problem in and of itself. It's a complex problem that's part of an even larger complex problem.
Mhm.
And it like so I'm the way that I read is I read on my commute. So when the pandemic hit, I actually read less because I have like an hour long commute on a
Mhm.
bus/train. And so like that is 2 hours every single day that I can devote to reading and like not have to worry about anything else. Um
Mhm.
and so when the pandemic hit, lost that commute time, and so I lost a lot of that reading time, and so I had to like find it in other ways and like input it in other ways, and like that is a challenging thing to do. And so, but yes, no, this isn't a simple problem, and this doesn't have a simple solution. This is a solution where we kind of like all have to work together, and we all have to like help in the small ways that we can. And I'll definitely shout out the Romance Book Squad because when we were reading the Kerrigan Byrne series, they were giving out like extra copies that they had of
The
the books, and
series.
they were and like that helped people who like weren't necessarily able to get those as well. And in terms of like talking about how many books you kind of constantly have to read, like there are times when I like feel guilty that I'm not like listening to an audiobook. Like and like after a while you're just like, "Man, this is exhausting. Why did I do this to myself?"
But then you're reminded of like the power and the reason why you love books, and then you just come right back to it, and then you're willing to go through the torture all over
Yeah,
again.
definitely, definitely.
But this has been such an amazing discussion, something that I a dialogue I should say, because there is no end to a dialogue. It can
Yes.
continue. This has been an amazing dialogue. I want you guys in the comment section down below to tell us your thoughts about this topic. What do you think about consumers on BookTube and like paying to get or like buying a ton of books? Like, what do you think about anything that we said in the video? Let us know down in the comment section down below. I'll link Annie's Instagram as well in the description box, so you guys can definitely go give her a follow. And if you haven't followed me, make sure you follow me on Instagram too, because I'm there too. But
Mhm.
thank you guys so much for watching this video. Thank you so much to you, Annie, for coming on my channel to talk
Thanks for
about this
having me.
topic with me. And like I said, this is our opinions and our opinions alone. If you
Definitely.
get offended, I'm sorry. We can agree to disagree, but if there's something harmful, let us know. I can't stress that enough because I just want that to be very clear in these videos that these are our opinions. But thank you guys again so much for watching. I'll catch you guys with a brand new video. Bye, everyone.